today's show is about Christian hypocrisy. Yes, we said it, and yes, we're going to talk about it. You know, we lovingly love to stir the pot.
Yes.
And it's good.
It's fun.
Because it's healthy.
Courage forces clarity.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to change the needle without courage.
What's the biggest issue you hear from non-believers, or would you say non-practicing Christians?
Yeah,
About Christians.
Right. Or church folk, maybe.
Hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Number one.
Yeah.
The number one issue for Christians is, it goes back to that DC Talk song. You remember the very first album?
Yeah.
It's the greatest single cause of atheism in the world is Christians who walk out the door and acknowledge Jesus with their lips but deny him by their lifestyle.
That's right. When clarity is not forced, then you end up with hypocrisy. It boils down to when you hear that thing about they're all hypocrites.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
Yeah, let's address that.
We know you're ticked off and you're just saying stuff, but we also know there's truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the truth? What's the baby in the bathwater? And so that's what I want to get to today. Hypocrisy is the most brilliant form of ignorance in the church because most people don't understand they're participating in it. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. It's not that people are nasty or deceitful or, like the outside world kind of tosses at us. You're a bunch of hypocrites. Well, not necessarily. We don't. But where they're right is we're doing it and we don't recognize it. Wait a second, I've been hypocritical without realizing it, and that's where most people are. I'm not saying most people are hypocrites. I'm saying it's accidental. So in a sense, it is a brilliant form of ignorance. The first one is moderation. When you consider moderation, what we view that as is moderation's good in everything. Well, because Scripture talks about moderation. Moderation, when it comes to drinking alcohol, is one thing. Mm-hmm. Moderation as a thing does not apply to faith. Putting your spouse and your children above God. Mm. You see why that's ignorant. People don't mean to do it. And they even use Scripture to back it up. Put your spouse, love your wife as Christ loved the church. Well, that's true, and you should. But what happens is it gets out of kilter. You set God over here, and you actually are loving your spouse more than you love the Lord. And your children, how often do we see that? And what happens? They kind of end up running your home. We are still agreeing that God is more powerful, but we are living like he's not quite as smart as us. He's more powerful than us? Yeah. But I'm actually smarter. Mm-hmm. That's how we live. Now, you see how that's ignorance. You don't mean to do that. Nobody's walking around saying that, but we live that way. That means that's hypocritical, but we don't know it. So we stay in that camp. The next one is wisdom. But wisdom begins with fear of or respect for the Lord. That's where it begins. It's not saying run from him because he's got a baseball bat and that gives you wisdom. It's saying listen to him, respect him, put him above all and even below as the foundation of everything, and God will give you wisdom. Wisdom in man's perception is common sense. It's willpower. It's the yeah, but thing. Yes, I believe that, but this is reality, which is completely not from God. So to live in both of these camps, to address one and say, yeah, that's wisdom is the fear of the Lord, begins with the fear of the Lord, but to live over here in the fear of everything but the Lord, based on common sense and logic,
is a form of hypocrisy.
It is hypocrisy, and we act on it not out of deceit, but out of ignorance, because clarity isn't forced. Yeah, let's get into some other examples. We've got this idea of in the world, but not of the world. Oh, we believe that, and we say that, but we don't live that. If you're not of the world, then you're of God, and that's it. So we have to be of heaven, and that is the idea of sonship. This is God's perspective. He wants us to be sons and daughters, to see the world the way he does, and to live that out from him into the earth. It's so different and backwards than the way the world thinks. We end up striving for better behavior or groveling, for approval, and God, please bless what I'm doing. And what happens when you live that way? It doesn't mean you don't live for God. It means You're asking him for stuff he's already handed you as a son or daughter. So we live in this weary place. Another one is unconditional love, right? And sent a text out the other day on that one just because, frankly, I'm tired of hearing people talk about it and not live it. It looks like feeding the poor while they despise the rich. All right? It looks like loving the humble while hating the arrogant. Okay? Now, Jesus didn't like arrogance, but he didn't hate them. Hate, this is action. This is action. The other side of that, God's view on this is lowering our expectations of people and in raising them of him. If you do that, then you can love unconditionally.